Welcome. Learning Science Goes Online is a series of short videos in which we analyze key findings from the education research literature and then connect those to the practice of designing and teaching online courses. In this video, we're going to be looking into formative assessment in online courses. And in particular, the first question we're going to address is, what is the effect of formative assessment on students' learning in online courses? And to look into this, we're going to look at an online college-level brain and behavior course. In this course, the students were offered practice quizzes. These were participation graded and made up of short answer questions. And in terms of the content in the course, it was either not covered in these quizzes, covered by factual questions, or covered by application questions. And keep this in mind because this is important for the study design and the results we're going to look at in a minute. And then the learning outcomes were measured with an end of unit exam. Unlike the practice questions, which were short answer, this end of unit exam is multiple choice. There are two limitations that I'm going to mention quickly here. First of all, the sample size was pretty small. There weren't that many students who participated in this study. And secondly, this is an observational study. So the comparison is between exam performance on topics that were and were not covered by the quizzes. However, this is a little bit offset because we're looking at a phenomenon here called the testing effect. And this has been replicated in many other settings in many other situations. So this is just one example of the testing effect in action. So let's look at the data. For the exam questions that were not covered by quizzes, performance was lower than exam questions that were covered by factual questions in the quizzes or by application questions in the quizzes. And this is an example of that generalizable phenomenon known as the testing effect. The theory behind the testing effect basically says that the effort of performing an exam, answering a question, actually helps you to consolidate memory. But as I mentioned, the exam was a multiple choice question exam, and the practice questions were short answer. So is there an effect of quiz question type? And for this, we're going to look at a different study. This is an experimental study, which means that participants were randomized into different conditions for the purposes of the study. And what they did is they watched an art history video lecture, and this was followed by a few different interventions. In one case, they had no opportunity to restudy the material. In another case, they answered multiple choice quiz questions about the material immediately after watching the video. And in the third case, they answered short answer quiz questions right after watching the video. 1 month later, the subjects came back and took an exam where they answered questions about the video that they had watched. This does also have some limitations, of course, the main one being that this is a laboratory study, so we have to be careful about extrapolating to other situations. But as I said, this is an area of the literature where there's a lot of research from a variety of different settings. So here are the results. We can see on that 1 month follow-up exam, those who didn't restudy at all had a pretty low score. Those who answered multiple choice questions and then came back and took the exam a month later scored a little bit better. But the best score is in short answer questions, those who studied with a short answer question quiz. And the theory here relates to cognitive difficulty or cognitive effort. A short answer question is a recall type question. You have to recall the correct answer. And that's more effortful cognitively than answering a multiple choice question where you have to recognize the correct answer in a list. And so the theory says that the more effortful the retrieval, the better the memory formation that's going to occur. So this leads to some specific recommendations for instructors building online courses. First of all, I would recommend using quizzing. That seems fairly obvious, but it is well supported by the research. Secondly, it's probably a good idea to make the stakes low. So you could make the quiz worth a low proportion of the total course grade, or you could even make it participation graded. Thirdly, when you're designing the quiz, remember that recall type questions or short answer questions are probably going to lead to deeper learning than recognition questions or multiple choice questions. But you do need to balance this with your design. And so you may find it easier to develop multiple choice questions for the content that you're creating. And critically, I didn't address the studies that show this, but part of the process of learning from testing probably includes the feedback that you receive. So at a minimum, you should probably provide the correct answers so that students can see the correct answers after they have attempted the questions. And you might also consider including explanations of the correct answers. Thanks for watching. You're free to reuse this video for internal training in your school, but please do not reuse it for any commercial purposes.